Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars. SoundCartel. It's true that some of us are reticent about telling our stories. Perhaps we don't like to reveal too much about ourselves to others. But remember that it's this core that connects us, that builds relationships in life and in business. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Veteran sales and customer service expert Colin Pearce, now a full-on storyteller in his own right, will tell us that now more than ever, we should be prepared to open up, be honest, and tell the stories that reveal our humanity. It's good for us. It's good for everyone around us. And it's certainly good for business, because stories move us. They'll make people warm to us, remember us, and hopefully become loyal. Actually, to illustrate his point, Colin has a story to tell us, told to him by a young woman just recently. Let us warn you that it's a sad story and the business application comes later. So hang in there. He tells Heather Dawson it's all about a chap called Daz.
See, this chap, Daz, he's a builder. Darryl, of course, a father of 5. He retired from building to a small farm about 2 hours' drive from the city. And he had a happy second relationship. Actually, in his case, it was a third relationship. And they were doing fine. And the farm life was good. He was semi-retired and did the odd building consult now and again. But he developed a bit of a sore throat, a swallowing kind of a lump in the throat thing. And, of course, bit of diagnosis at the local hospital revealed that he had a growth in his back of his throat and his esophagus, and over 5 or 6 years this developed. In spite of chemotherapy, in spite of radiotherapy, this developed into a terrible situation where he developed full-on esophageal cancer. The cancer moved through his larynx into his tongue, part of his mouth. He had some tongue removed. Then he wasn't able to swallow it all. And so for the last 2 years, he's been feeding himself through a feeding tube in his tummy. And all the same, he was in pretty good spirits. He'd had some grandchildren. He loved them. He loved meeting up. Whenever he came to town, he'd catch up with the grandchildren and the children. But he was pretty aware of the fact that his time was up. Anyway, he was in and out of hospital and the visits were getting longer. And 2 weeks ago, the family got a message to say Daz is in hospital. He's driven himself in, but he's not going home and he may not last the night, so you'd better get here. He made it through the night, but the next day, and this is the part that strikes me as extraordinary, he was in good spirits. But the problem was that when he tried to sleep, because his breathing was so shallow and so brief, it would shock him into an awake state. A bit like with sleep apnea. Probably it was sleep apnea. But he would stop breathing, his brain would shock him with adrenaline, he'd wake up and he'd be terrified, he'd be frightened, his body was shocking, he'd lost so much weight. They couldn't put him through another few days of that, and they said, look, we're going to have to help you move along. We'll just let you go to sleep and let the body take care of itself. He didn't want to do that. But he said to the kids on the day, look, I mowed the lawn, so you don't have to worry about that if I do go home. I actually chopped all the chooks' heads off, so there's nothing to worry about. Nobody has to worry about feeding them. And they all laughed at him, and he wrote his will right there and then in front of them on a napkin, handed one of the kids the keys to his new Commodore, and they all said, Dad, it's okay to go. Well, they sang, they cried, they laughed, he cuddled the baby, he danced with the baby, got out of bed and did some beautiful ballet moves with a little tiny 3-month-old baby. He had a beautiful last day looking out at the ocean from the hospital, looking at a beautiful view and huddling and hugging all his children. And they knew that he had given consent for this medication to be given, and the idea was that it would be the last he'd see them. And that they left, hugs, kisses, goodbyes, everything done and dusted. 8 o'clock they administered the medication. 2:30 in the morning they said he fell asleep and he hasn't woken up. Now, you probably have heard that sort of story if you've been near anybody who's approached death or been in their last days, and it's a pretty sobering thing. When you talk about pilgrimages, people going to holy places, to Lourdes or to Jerusalem, to Rome, the scientists who discover that, or the theologians, say people go there because they're known as near places or close places, close where the divine and the eternal meet. And I said to this young woman who was telling me the story, you've been in a near place or a close place where eternity and earth met, and you were privileged to be there. And I'm sure many of the listeners have been in that situation. But there's something about it that is so sobering, so salutary and so beautiful. He'd done what he could, he'd done what he did, and the time had come. How has that affected me? You become confronted by something extraordinary and your focus is so narrow right now. You've got your thoughts right on that, and you'll think about that for the rest of the day, maybe even part of tomorrow, and you'll say, you'll go home and you'll say, Colin told me a story today, really set me back thinking, or words to that effect. That's the power of a story.
Well, Colin, a sad story, and I don't want to be manipulative, but we're talking to a business audience here, so can you link it to our business lives?
Everybody in business is a person, and we should not shy away from telling truths that are real to us. And every part of our life, including our business life, has moments that require us to be honest and open and let the hormones flow, the dopamines, the oxytocins, the endorphins, the whole thing, the cortisols. So application of business, yes, it's that we're all people. But secondly, in business, let me use this moment to say every incident that will evoke focus, love, commitment, loyalty is a story that needs to be told. It may not hit everybody in the same way. It may not be as powerful as that story. Every story has the opportunity to connect us and to reinforce the humanity of people who work with us and who buy from us and who sell to us. Because what we're seeing more and more, particularly through the pandemic era, is we have discovered that we're human beings after all, that we're frail, subject to whatever's going on around us, and often don't have all the answers. And so to be able to confront those issues and help people through their subjects, their thoughts, their encounters with story is going to be very, very valuable as time goes on, more so than it has been in 1920, 21. But this will go on for years with people being able to relate to the hardships and difficulties and challenges they faced.
That was Colin Pearce, master storyteller. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Executive producer is Heather Dawson. Producers are Nick Schilberger, Chris Ashmore, and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts and Belinda Trimboli. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.